Good day, everyone. In this statistical refresher, we will talk about the frequency distributions, measure of central tendency, and the measures of variability. So for our topic outline, we will talk about frequency distribution. The grouped frequency distribution, histogram, the bar graph, and the frequency polygon. For the measures of central tendency, we will have the mean, median, and mode. For the measures of variability, we will tackle the range, the interquartile range, the semi-interquartile range, average deviation, standard deviation, and the variance. For intended learning outcomes, we will, of course, identify the frequency distribution and the graphs used in it, know the measures of central tendency, and identify the measures of variability. Now, first, we have frequency distribution. Frequency distribution is a common distribution technique in statistics. Frequency distribution in statistics is a graph or data set or organized to show the frequency of occurrence or of each possible outcome of a repeatable event observed multiple times. Simple examples are election tally. In election tally, we tally votes, and those tallies are counted as frequencies. But when we talk about the grouped frequency distribution, we make intervals of scores rather than individual scores. For example, in a 100 exam, 100 item exam, instead of listing scores from 1 to 100, we use intervals like 1 to 50 and 51 to 100. These are class intervals. If you score like 60, it will be tallied in the 51 to 100 range. Simple as that. Now we can also use graphic illustrations for frequency distribution. We can use graphs that are usually composed of lines, bars, points, or other symbols to illustrate a distribution. Example of those are these three: the histogram, bar graph, and frequency polygon. You may look at a histogram like a bar graph, but it is different. Histograms are contiguous, meaning they are dikit-dikit. On its axis, it uses actual scores or intervals. And bar graph is, of course, different. They are not contiguous, meaning hindi sila dikit-dikit. Bar graphs usually uses categorization instead of scores like pass or fail, male or female, and more. Now for this frequency polygon, class intervals and frequencies are met through dots, and they will express a continuous point by connecting those axes. Now let's go to the measures of central tendency. From the word itself, central tendency, it is the measure of average or central between scores. Now for measuring central tendencies, we use either the mean, median, and mode. For the mean, it is the average or the most common value in a set of numbers. For the mean, we just simply add all scores and divide them from the number of scores lined up. For example, 1 plus 2 equals 3. So since there are two scores, the 1 and 2, we divide 3 to 2, which is 1.5, and 1.5 is the mean. For the median, it is simply the middle score in a set. For example, in a set of 1, 2, 3, the median is obviously 2. For the mode, it is its most frequently occurring score in a distribution. For example, in a set of 2, 2, 3, the most frequent score is 2, which 2 is the mode. Finally, we have the measures of variability. Now, simply said, variability is how the scores are spread in a distribution. For measuring the variability, we can use the range, which is scattering the actual scores in an axis. We can also use the interquartile ranging, which is dividing the range of scores in two halves, the upper half and the lower half. For the semi-quartile score, we spread the score by dividing interquartile range into two. So we can have a range, or by splitting the upper half in the lower half. Now finally, we have the average deviation, standard deviation, and the variance. Now, what is the relation between these three? So, obviously, these three play around the mean. For average deviation, it is determined through the average distance between each data, the value, and the mean, meaning it gets a sense of how spread out the values in a dataset are. Now, for the standard deviation, it spreads around the average, so it is relative to the mean. And lastly, variance, it is the average square deviations from the mean. Now, while standard deviation is the square root of this number, these three reflect the measure of what do you call this? Reflect the measure of variability in a distribution. But yes, their units differ. So yes, I hope we all meet halfway in this report. Thank you, everyone.